Hello. The Divine Code reading for January 27th, pages 467 and 468. We are in the introduction to Prohibition of Forbidden Relations. This part of the Divine Code involves a number of precepts for Gentiles, including prohibitions of some specific sexual relationships, the precepts relating to marriage and sexual relations within marriage, categories of appropriate and inappropriate marriage partners, and divorce. As indicated above, these precepts of the Noahide Code are fundamental to an ordered society. This is also important to note that the one God commands fundamental sexual laws for all mankind, in all societies, Jew and non-Jew alike. Non-Jews who observe their laws of the seven Noahide commandments as part of the Torah of Moses have accepted the written and oral Torah as their moral frame of reference. The oral Torah explains that these righteous people from all nations have a share in the world to come. Rambam Laws of Kings 8:11, Mishnat Rabbi Eliezer, section 6. So these laws are fundamental to society. And we follow them because they're given from God in the Torah. And both the written and the oral exclamations are both together what we are following. It is essential to understand the Torah sources for these laws in the context of their traditional meanings. So when we read the Bible, when we read anything, we're taking ourselves with us, and it's through our own filters that we're reading. It's important to understand it through the filters, the traditional filters that the Bible would be understood. Peshat is the plain meaning of the text, the foundation point of Torah study. Rashi explains that even the level of plain meaning must be based on both text and context, and does not always correspond to what the lay takes to be the literal meaning. Let us examine some concrete examples within the context of sexual morality. So within the study of Torah, there's different levels. It's usually referred to as of the study of Torah. Peshat is the basic meaning. What does the text actually say? And then there is learning the noticing things that raise questions within the text. The learning from those questions, learning homiletical exclamations. And then there's also the spiritual, more mystical aspects of Torah study. Those are the basic four aspects of Torah study. And then there's Chassidus that kind of wraps everything together and works with all four at the same time. So now they're looking for examples of Peshat, of the literal understanding within the Bible text. 1. Leviticus 18:22 is an oft-quoted prohibition involving homosexuality. You, speaking of males, shall not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. It is a abomination, and the word used is toevia. As explained in the following chapter, the source verse which prohibits homosexual activity by Gentiles is Genesis 2, 24. So this verse in Leviticus is where the Jewish people learn not to engage in homosexual activities. The Gentiles, non-Jews, learn this from the second chapter of Genesis, which obligates a man not to engage in any sexual activity other than with his permitted wife. Okay, but looking at the Leviticus text, this verse unequivocally prohibits homosexual activity as an abomination to God. However, as explained by the Talmud in Tractate Nedarvim 51a, the word toeva can be viewed as an acronym for three other Hebrew words: toe, ata, and ba, which means you have been led astray. Now, this would not be Peshat. And I'm a little bit confused about the writing here, where we have a paragraph discussing Peshat and the necessity to understand the literal meaning. That's often lost on people that are not familiar with the Torah. And now we're going into an example of this, but we're not going into an example of Peshat. The fact that there's an acronym becomes a question that's broad. What are we looking here with this acronym? And then what's going to continue in here is what's called a derash. That's a homiletical exclamation from the question. And so therefore, we're going off of the literal meaning of the text, the Peshat. We're going away from the Peshat, and we're going into a homiletical exclamation, a lesson that can be learned from the text. So it's not exactly the way it's explained here is that that this is an example of Peshat. It's not an example of Peshat. It's an example of a deeper explanation of the Torah text. Reading that way, the term toeva transmits an urgent spiritual imperative while simultaneously providing instruction and support for the redemptive process of growth. After all, if someone is led astray, is making a mistake, or is even deliberately transgressing, the Torah teaches that God provides a process of to transform oneself and the behavior that needs correction. This is called teshuvah, that is repentance. What is teshuvah? It is an internal transformational process in which behavior change becomes the desired outcome. It involves a rebirthing of the soul, a return to the undefiled spiritual state in which the person has created, a process by which a person undertakes a solemn commitment to live in accordance with God's will once it becomes known to him. So this idea of teshuvah is accurate for anything that's going on with a person's life. The person is having trouble with stealing. The person is having trouble with blasphemy. Whatever the person's having trouble with, that the teshuvah is returning to the proper way for the person. And here we're seeing it within this context, an example of this. Understanding this imperative, Rabbi Shmuel Kaminsky wrote a letter of endorsement in March 2000 to my organization, and this is Arthur A. Goldberg. His organization, Jonah, Jews Offering New Alternatives for Healing. That's jonahweb.org, in which he stated, anything that the Torah forbids, a human being is able to control. So this is an axiom. This is a basic rule that if the Torah forbids something, then it's possible to control oneself in that area. Many times, additional professional assistance is needed to control these deviations, such as psychologists, psychiatrists, and rabbinic authorities. In other words, those who have engaged in the acts prohibited by Leviticus 18:22, can find help through the spiritual practice of teshuvah, combined with emotional, spiritual, and intellectual readaptation. Rambam explains the laws of repentance 2:2 that the teshuvah process, understanding and regretting the past failing, changing present patterns of thought, feelings, and behaviors that came about because of the past, and resolving to do things differently in the future. So this is a whole genre of rabbinic writings, what's called Musar, which is the changing of the person. And there's all sorts of steps involved. There's different aspects involved, and this is studied in a great depth, and a lot of work has gone into developing ways of character development, putting the person on the correct path. The secular clinical methodology for overcoming homosexual inclinations and behavior, referred to as gender-affirming process, mirrors the process of teshuvah. Jewish tradition teaches that a person retains the ability to transform him or herself and modify his or her thoughts, feelings, or behavior patterns. And that's the idea of the mind ruling the heart. The mind, which is connected to the godly influence, controls the person's emotions, controls the person's passions. The mind ruling over, and that's a unique aspect of the human who walks upright, whereas other animals walk where the mind and the heart are on the same level. The human, the mind is above the heart. There is no blemish of sin that cannot be washed away, no spiritual wound that cannot be healed. Indeed, Torah teaches that those who are emotionally wounded, ill, or distraught to heal through teshuvah, medical attention, and counseling. Thus, by understanding the deeper implications of Leviticus 18:22 and the connection between Toeva and teshuvah, we learn how God set forth the path of healing for those who have violated the prohibition of homosexuality. Thank you.